Human anatomy, the spine. This video illustrates one of the main parts of the human body, the spinal cord, or the vertebral column. One can understand the intricacies of the movements of the vertebral column by getting familiar with the joints and bones and the set of complex muscles which make up the spinal cord. The vertebral column in mammals is known as the backbone or the spine. The vertebral column protects the spinal cord and even supports the head. The spinal cord serves as a joint for the ribs and musculature of the back. The spine is a cord-like bony structure in the human body and other vertebrates. Human vertebral column is formed by serial arranged units called the vertebrae and are inwardly placed. This vertebral column extends from the base of the skull and constitutes the main framework of the trunk. These vertebrae have a central hollow position, which is called the neural canal. The spinal cord passes through this neural canal. The first vertebrae is called the atlas, and this atlas articulates the occipital condyle, which is a kidney-shaped convex surface found in the lower back part of the skull. The entire vertebral column is differentiated into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal regions starting from the skull. The human body consists of about 24 articulating, or joints, vertebrae that compose these three sections. However, in reality, it consists of 33 vertebrae, where the other 5 are fused to form the sacrum. Broadly, the three main sections of the spine include the cervical spine, thoracic spine, and the lumbar spine. The cervical spine begins with the base of the skull. 7 vertebrae make up the cervical spine, which are small and delicate, with 8 pairs of cervical nerves. It is these vertebrae that help in the movement of the head and the neck. The thoracic spine is located in the chest area and contains 12 vertebrae. These are connected to the rib, which limits the flexibility of these vertebrae. The ribs aid in the protection of many vital organs in the human body. There is another float bone on the ventral midline of the thorax, which is called the sternum. The vertebrae in the lumbar spine in most people is 5 in number. They are larger than the thoracic or cervical spine. They carry most of the body's weight and support flexibility and extension. Each of the vertebrae is supported by a fibrous disc, known as the intervertebral discs, that act like cushions between the bones. The body of the vertebrae provide a resting place for these fibrous discs. The vertebrae increase in size from the neck downwards, that is, from the second cervical to the first thoracic. There is a slight decrease in the next 3 vertebrae, and then again there is a gradual increase in size till the sacrum vertebrae. Each fibrous disc is made up of 2 parts. The annulus is the hard outer layer of the vertebrae. It surrounds a sponge-like center called the nucleus. There are 4 facet joints in each vertebrae. 1 pair faces upwards. Stability to the spine is provided by interlocking with the adjacent vertebrae. A bone called the sacrum lies just below the lumbar spine. The sacrum is uniquely shaped. The lamina covers the spinal canal. It is a large hole in the center of the vertebrae. The spinal nerve passes through them. Part of the spine bones seem to be projecting outside the spine, and these can be felt while running hands down the backbone. This part of the bone that projects outside is known as the spinous process. The spinous process is paired with 2 transverse processes, which are oriented at 90 degrees to the spinous process, 1 on each side. They provide attachment to the back muscles. Hope this gives you a fair understanding of the spine. By the way, if you haven't yet, please go ahead and subscribe to our channel eLearning for the latest update on high-end 3D anatomy videos here.
The structure of the rib cage. In your body, the framework of the chest is called the thoracic cage, or in common terminology, the rib cage. Its design functions to protect vital organs such as your heart and lungs, and also provides points of attachment for many muscles. The thoracic or rib cage is comprised of three main parts: the sternum, the ribs, and the thoracic vertebrae. The sternum, also called the breastbone, is located in the middle of your chest, and it is composed of three parts. The manubrium is the widest part at the top of the bone, the body, located in the middle, and the xiphoid process at the bottom. There are a total of 12 ribs, and they originate on or between the thoracic vertebrae in the vertebral column, and they wrap around the sides of your body and end in the front of your body. Ribs 1 through 7 are called true ribs because they individually connect to the sternum by way of cartilaginous extensions called costal cartilages, which you can see here in this model. Ribs 8 through 12, located at the bottom of the rib cage, are called false ribs because they do not directly connect to the sternum from their own costal cartilages. Ribs 8 through 10 fuse with the costal cartilage of rib 7, and ribs 11 and 12 are called floating ribs because they do not connect with the sternum at all. The thoracic vertebrae make up the thoracic curvature in the vertebral column, as you can see here. Each of the 12 ribs articulate or form a joint with the corresponding vertebra. So, for example, rib 11 articulates with vertebra T11, and some of the ribs, such as rib 9, articulates with T9 and the vertebra above T8. And that be the basics on the structure of the rib cage. There are a total of 30 bones that make up each of the lower limbs in your body. The lower limb includes the leg and the foot. The femur or thigh bone is the longest bone in your body, and it articulates or forms a joint at the top with a hip bone. This bone actually angles inward, which brings the knee closer to the midline of the body. The patella bone, which is often called the kneecap, is attached to the quadriceps muscle by the quadriceps tendon, and it is also attached to the tibia bone by the patellar tendon or patellar ligament. This bone allows the tendon to glide more smoothly and provides protection for the knee joint. At the joint of the knee, the femur meets the tibia bone and the fibula bone, which are the bones of your lower leg. The tibia is the larger of these bones, and it is located closer to the midline of the body, and it forms a synovial joint, which is a joint with a capsule, with the femur bone. The fibula is located lateral to the tibia, and it forms two joints with the tibia: the superior tibiofibular joint and the inferior tibiofibular joint. It is connected to the femur by the LCL, or lateral collateral ligament. At the distal end of both the tibia and fibula, near the foot, they articulate with the talus bone to form the ankle joint. The talus bone is classified as a tarsal bone of the foot, as your foot is comprised of three types of bones: tarsals, metatarsals, and phalanges. There are a total of 7 tarsals: the just mentioned talus bone, the calcaneus bone, which is the heel of the foot, the navicular bone, the cuboid bone, and a set of 3 cuneiform bones: the medial cuneiform, intermediate cuneiform, and lateral cuneiform. There are a total of 5 metatarsals, which are denoted by the Roman numerals 1 through 5, with 1 located at the base of the big toe near the midline of the body, and 5 at the base of the little toe. The phalanges are the bones of the toes, and they make up a total of 14 bones. The big toe, which is also called the hallux, has only 2 phalanges: the distal phalanx of hallux and the proximal phalanx of hallux, with the distal bone being further from the heel. Each of the 4 other toes has 3 phalanges: a distal phalanx, a middle phalanx, and a proximal phalanx. And that be the bones and structure of the legs and feet. The upper limb, or arm and hand, contains 30 different bones. The humerus is the largest and longest bone of the upper limb, and it makes up the upper portion of your arm. At the elbow joint, it has 2 curved surfaces. Looking at the skeleton from the front or anterior view, when the skeleton is standing in the anatomical position, face and feet forward and palms facing forward, the outer or lateral curved surface is called the capitulum, and the inner or medial curved surface is called the trochlea. The capitulum articulates or forms a joint with the radius bone, and the trochlea articulates with the ulna bone. The radius and ulna are the bones that make up your forearm. In the anatomical position, the radius is located laterally or further from the trunk of the body, and the ulna is located closer to the trunk of the body. There are also two different joints formed between these bones called radial-ulnar joints. One is located at the upper or proximal parts of the bones near the elbow, and it is called the proximal radial-ulnar joint. And the second is called the distal radial-ulnar joint, and it is near the hand. There is also a membrane called the interosseous membrane between these bones. It is comprised of dense fibrous tissue, and it keeps the bones at a fixed distance apart and helps to shift loads or forces between the bones. At the distal end of the radius, near the hand, is the radiocarpal joint, which is formed between the radius and three of the bones that form part of the wrist, the scaphoid, lunate, and triquetrum bones. These three bones are called carpals, and along with the pisiform, the trapezium, trapezoid, capitate, and hamate bones. There are a total of 8 carpal bones. The distal carpals articulate with the bones of the palm called the metacarpals. There are a total of 5 metacarpals, which are denoted by Roman numerals 1 through 5, with 1 located at the base of the thumb and 5 at the base of the little finger. The bones of the fingers are called phalanges, and the thumb consists of 2 phalanges, with the 2nd through 5th fingers having 3 phalanges each. The thumb, also called the pollex, has a proximal phalanx of pollex near the palm and a distal phalanx of pollex away from the wrist. Distal meaning away from the trunk of the body, and proximal meaning closer to the trunk of the body. The 2nd through 5th fingers each have a proximal phalanx, a middle phalanx, and a distal phalanx. And that be the bones of the arm and hand.